Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more slug testing, more specifically 410 slug testing. And I've definitely got a test out here today that I really don't know how it's going to do. It could really surprise us, or it could be absolutely atrocious at the same time. So I'm definitely excited to see what actually happens here. So for the load I've got out here today, I brought out some more of the Winchester Super X 410 slugs. These are 3-inch, quarter-ounce lead Foster style rifled slug going about 1,800 feet per second, so the box says. Now we've tested these once before in my Mossberg 500 410 and they didn't really impress us all that much. So I don't necessarily have the highest hopes for these particular rounds today, but we're going to test them and see, at least for a start, what happens. Now as for the setup we're going to be running them through, it's definitely something a little bit interesting. I've got this little thing back out again. This is a New England Firearms Pardner youth model SB-1. It's a single shot break action 410 and it does have a fixed full choke barrel. Now I can already see the comments coming now that you shouldn't fire slugs through a full choke barrel, and I think the answer to that question is somewhere in the middle. Yes, you can safely fire rifled slugs through a full choke barrel. However, I would not suggest doing it all the time, shooting thousands of rounds through a full choke barrel, or else you will start to wear down the constriction on the end of this barrel eventually. But Foster style slugs are designed to fit through almost any choke, at least all the way up through a full choke. So doing them every now and again, a few here and a few there, is not going to hurt your setup. So this combination is definitely going to be something a little bit interesting. It could surprise us and do pretty well, or it could be absolutely terrible at the same time. But as for the test, we're going to kind of do it the same way we usually at least try to start out with these 410 slugs. I've got the target set up down there, and I'm going to start with a 3-shot group at 25 yards, and we'll see how it performs. If it's a decent looking group, I'll move it out to 50 yards and take another 3-shot group and see how it does there. But if the 25-yard group is absolutely terrible, we'll just add 2 more shots to make it a 5-shot group and measure it and just see what it does. Is this a scientific way to test it? No, not particularly, but it's kind of what we're working with. But either way, let's get you guys set up with a view of the target, and we'll start off with 3 shots at 25 yards, and we'll go from there based on what we see as far as performance goes. Alright, so after 3 shots at 25 yards, this is what we got. We had 2 that were kind of sort of close up there, and then 1 that was right down on the top edge of that little circle. Now ignore the 2 little poke holes there. That's from the little gas check pieces under the slugs. Now obviously we were hitting pretty high at 25 yards, and I was bared down on that bead sight about as far as I could physically go. So I mean, to start out with, it wasn't looking too terrible, but that 1 definitely threw it off. So here's what I'm thinking we do for this test. I'm thinking we stay at 25 yards. I'll move that left circle target down about 10 inches or so below the right one, and I'll use that as my aim point. And we'll shoot a second 3-shot group at 25 yards, which will put our slug somewhere in the vicinity of that circle, and see what we get, and see if it's consistent or if it gives us a better group or a worse group. So let's get reset up, and we'll shoot over here at this right target and see what we get at 25 yards for our second 3-shot group. Okay, so for our second 25-yard group here, I guess I put my circle a little bit too low because we were under that. But either way, we still got a good group here. And it looks a lot more consistent. I mean, that's a 2 3/4 inch group there. And if I didn't mention it, the first group was a 9-inch group. So we definitely improved a little bit. And for what that gun is, 2 3/4 inches isn't too terrible. I mean, it's so short being a youth model that it's hard to get a good bead on that front sight. So I'm not too displeased with that. Now, I was just going to leave it at that, but just for the sake of doing it, I have a couple more rounds out here. I think I'm going to step it back to 40 yards. It's not 50, but 40 is close enough and probably as far as I would ever shoot that with slugs. So I think we step it back to 40 yards and just see what happens, if nothing else. Alright, so for our 40-yard group here, I took an initial shot with the target there, and we hit all the way up here. So I went ahead and made an adjustment and moved that bottom target down there for an aim point. And I know this is probably looking confusing at this point, but our group is the bottom one of those two holes, and then that hole and that hole. So those three holes right there are all of our group. That is a 10 3/4 inch group at 40 yards. So definitely not anything super impressive, that's for sure. But I think it's a lot better than what it would have done in my Mossberg 500, that's for sure. So overall here, 25 yards is probably about the max you would want to use something like this for. And with that gun shooting high, you definitely want to drill and tap it for a scope or red dot or something like that if you were to shoot slugs out of it. So I guess we got some kind of information out of it, if nothing else, that it's okay inside of 25 yards. So definitely not anything super impressive, but not as bad as what it could have been either, considering the setup. Okay, so for our chronograph numbers here, it seemed like most of them were in the 1700 range. The box was claiming 1800, so for a short youth barrel, that's not too bad at all. Except for that last shot, which was 1360, as you can see. But as for our actual numbers and stuff here, we had a high of 1754, a low of 1360, and that gave us an average of 1682. So what is that, 118 feet per second under what the box is claiming? Not too bad for a little shorty youth barrel. I would have expected, you know, probably 1500 or so. So that's definitely not too bad at all. All right, y'all, well, what did you think about that test there? Definitely some interesting results, I guess. I guess we learned that it's kind of a 25-yard setup, but it has shown some better performance than my Mossberg 500 did, so that's worth something, I guess. But overall, it's kind of expected for a setup like that. You know, slug performance is not what that gun was necessarily made to do. So we kind of got what we got here for today. But as usual, leave your thoughts in the comments and let me know what you think about it. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you hoping for a little bit better or a little bit worse? And have you used a setup like that, or do you use a setup like that with slugs? And if so, what for? Let me know all that down in the comments. But with that being said, we've got a bunch more videos coming y'all's way with some new setups as well, so you're not going to want to miss those. We do have a channel Instagram where you can see sneak peeks of things like this from time to time, as well as a channel mailbox where you can send stuff to the channel. So if you're interested in any of that information, it will all be in the description for you. But with that being said, I'm going to get my stuff packed up before it starts raining out here this afternoon. So I'll see y'all in the next one.